Sup everybody, this is Karak with ACG, the Bearded Shaman of Gaming, bringing you another look at a game for another day for another system. Today's the old comic book styled 4x or 4x or 4x space strategy game, whichever way you want to call it. It's known as Stars and Shadow from Ashtar Games and published by Iceburg Interactive. Stars and Shadows hits early access September 2015, and today I'm going to tell you a little bit about it, what I thought about my time with it, and what I think of the early access version. As you guys know, when a game asks for money, it puts itself in the crosshairs of judgment. Let's see if it escapes unscathed. So as always, if you like the video, maybe subscribe. So here's my review for the early access version of Stars and Shadow. Aggressive intelligence instead of artificial, starvation politics, and bad guys who look like that snake enemy in the Dennis Quaid movie Dreamscape. Graphics are up first. If there is ever a game that is actually the graphical equivalent of the saying, "I see," it's probably this one. Stars and Shadows does a pretty good job with what it has and what it's decided to offer, which is a comic book styled overview of its artistic representation, meted out across a 2D plane. And that's important to remember, nothing's 3D here, with everything from the galaxy map to the down and dirty battles and ships that probably cost more than all of Earth, ground down into precious powders and sold as snort to some elder god. While some people may not like that, the one thing that it has going for it is a unique style, and I like that myself. Additionally, the alien races had a very cool design with them, even if a few of them went the safe route of mimicking Earth creatures that got too close to a late-night college party where no one turned the lights on, resulting in the always adorable giant bug man, furry sort of kitty man thing, and of course the always appreciated snake child. While that won't be for everyone, I actually liked it. Now, ship designs all run along the various typical lines we expect without the ability to change their designs, but instead just sort of removing the missiles from the missile frigate and replacing them with nothing but lasers just because you wanted to name your own ship. The galaxy map and solar system map do a fairly good job representing what is occurring in the game. There are some issues though. And battle scenes, while representative of the weapons you have on the ship, are decidedly low effect right now, with small low resolution effects and possibly some placeholder graphics going on. As a package, there's a lot to like here. I really like the comic book look to everything, but there's some issues with the UI and of course some issues overall with just the presentation. But where early access stands, probably about what you would expect. Sound, music, and voice. And of course, sound is up first. Now, while the menu sounds are fine and there's a very cool muted musical note when moving the game from turn to turn, it's elsewhere that the sound absolutely kills me. Battle's a tinny and almost painful affair with explosions and lasers, all, well, pretty much everything above dog filtering. It's painful, and a lot of those samples sound really low bit. Additionally, things like bombarding a planet results in what can only be described as the sound you would hear if you asked the devil to create a sound no one ever wanted to hear. It's horrendous. It's like static, breaking glass, and bad ideas all got into a room and decided to combine forces like a fucking ear-killing superhero. It had me leaping to drop the volume controls. It was absolutely terrible. Hopefully the sound gets improved, because right now, this is definitely a work in progress. Music. Alright, so here we go. It's a little bit better. It's fairly light, and it's mostly ambient tracks with a couple highlights, like a strangely comedic style track or two in the customization screens. Right now, Stars and Shadow plays it safe with ambient synths and the occasional crunchy waveform. It's not bad, but as of yet, it doesn't either elevate nor engage within the experience that you're playing. It's just sort of there. I like it, but I want to see where it goes. Voice? None. So let's move on. Gameplay. So as with any of these games, you start out by deciding on a race, one of 5, with 2 more coming soon. Each has their own bonuses like being better scientists or better shipbuilders, and all have their own styles of unique homeworlds that they can build on at first without updating their technology base. One thing I did like is that the humans in this game are the lice of the spacefaring trade, exactly as we probably would be. Bipedal leeches with no homes to speak of, you don't even have a starting planet, and you're basically meandering around as a fallen race of putrescent villainy. Of course, this also makes them probably the most awesome in my book, but it makes them harder to start with because they don't have those home bases right at the starting of the game. But once you've decided of those, you basically jump into the galaxy screen and, well, start. Now, a couple things. Stars and Shadows does nothing, absolutely nothing unique, nor is it a game that appears burdened with the purpose to really shake things up. Instead, its desire here seems to be to offer a new game in the genre using a unique look and offering its own worldview. Now, this is something I've talked about in other reviews. There is absolutely nothing whatsoever wrong with that, because a lot of times somebody will look at another game game and they'll say, well, I'm not going to buy this game because there's already this game available. Well, guess what? A lot of people have already played that prior game. So moving on to new titles is exactly what we're looking for. There's nothing wrong with the idea of moving forward and not really shaking things up inherently in and of itself, as long as it does a good job. So let's see how it did. And yeah, actually, it's a bit meandering at times. You see, while expanding and colonizing are as easy as pretty much building new ships and boom, how's your mother, there's a great deal of roughness in the UI itself. Like when you're embarking and unloading colonists on transport ships, instead of a clean affair, it's this odd click on one planet, then go to the galaxy view, find another, click on that, without the ability to really set it up from one screen or in something far more streamlined. This results in a feel of a game that's trying to do too much with its screens instead of actually doing what it needs to with its screens in the first place, by putting, let's say, the galaxy screen above the solar system screen, but then having very little information about the planets overlaid unless you hit a question mark, resulting in basically a couple marbles floating at the bottom of your screen that, even if you've been there, doesn't even say the name of the planet. While these marbles may look good, colonizing them can also be difficult depending on if they have native species, match up with your current technology base for expansion, and a number of other reasons. It's a good solid base for an expansionist style game, but it's not quite there when it comes to the UI. Now, one thing I did like is that you can set up transports to move folks, but then double their duty as traders to planets, and that doesn't require manual setup. You just assign the ship to trading once you're done with whatever you were doing manually, and it fills up a quota of what you need. So, if you have planets without food, you can easily see that by hovering over the top status bars and looking at all those different icons, one of them being food, and then just start assigning ships, and they will figure it out on their own, as long as they're one of these 2 or 3 kinds of troop ships. Efficient and absolutely excellent use of double trade on the ships, and that's something I would like to see far more games do. Here's the reason why I knew that though, because the tutorial had a write-up on top of that ship to tell me. Sadly, that actually doesn't occur on all the ships, resulting in a couple times where you're looking at it going, yeah, I get that it's a missile frigate, but does that just mean it has missiles? Does it have any other pluses? It was a little bit odd there. Now, sadly, that also means when it comes to these troop ships and how they work and how trading is, it's just not really fully fleshed out right now. Nor is diplomacy, which has just recently been added. And that's good, because honestly, this is the type of AI that walks into a room with its R's up yelling, "Sup, bitches, come at me." And then when someone asks them to quiet down, they react by pretending everyone else has the friggin' problem. This is the most passive-aggressive AI I have ever seen in a game, reacting to trades like you're their best friend, and then turning around and after giving you a ton of money for something, they say suck it and declare war. Imagine having a battle with an alien race with very low self-confidence after you told them they look fat in their space pants. It's deadly, it's personal, and there's a really good chance you're never going to be friends again. Of course, what's nice is if you are friends, you can do the typical trades you would expect, trading money for planets, money for money, and so forth. One thing that absolutely impressed me in Stars and Shadows is it currently doesn't seem to adhere to the ESP omnipresent style of gaming in which everyone is fucking awesome at the one thing you are not mentality. And you guys know what I mean. If you're good at trading, you know the AI is building up ships. Good at shipbuilding, they're selling space Viagra to their citizens and cloning out their children. Hey, guess what? I'm good at breeding and colonizing, and then they shoot everything that moves, killing you off. Now here, you can meet others that have some of the same abilities you do, or meet one where they don't, and the diplomacy screen basically says, you are just really friggin' awesome, and these guys aren't. I like that. As a challenge, it's one thing, but manufactured fake challenge is true boredom to me. I mean, let's be honest, that's like doing the Drake equation with every number being 1. In the end, that's not what it's about. You're going into space, which is about the randomness there, and I loved that it occurred within this title. Meeting up alien peeps in a game like this is all about technology trees. It's like a colorful Excel spreadsheet in this game, and what it lacks in beauty, it sort of makes up for in depth and hyperlinking, the likes of which makes an old fan of these games like myself swoon. Go into a tech and see what other tech it leads to, but also see what prerequisites it has, and click on anything and you can jump to those techs or queue them up, creating a conga line of scientists just chomping at the bit to split the atom so they can get atom bombs and leaping to use them in ship engines so that they can miniaturize them into a ship shield so that they can then turn them into anti-nuclear missile defenses. It's actually very, very cool. While the presentation of it is not great at all, it does show true promise at delivering information. Now, as I discussed at the starting of this, the ship designs are basically locked to the races, so the only way to really upgrade them is to make sure that you have the required planet, a small space dock, or massive floating space dock, and hell, you can even create this game's version of Death Stars in the title, but you won't be breaking out of those racial divisions. You'll basically take a typical ship, tear it apart, and put in some new stuff. And that, of course, brings us to combat. Now, combat, of course, sticks in the 2D plane. You're looking straight down at the top of them, and there's a strange double-clicking on the ship style of choosing that confused the hell out of me at first, and it's really rough around the edges. It feels a bit like a mix of old hex-based style games that are shoved into this game, and it isn't quite ready for prime time yet. though it's not impossible to get the hang of it, and of course, you can also do things like auto-resolve the combat, which seems to work perfectly fine. AI in the ship-to-ship combats worked well, and it did offer a good, if not excellent, battle base to test the different ship designs I had on it. Now, combat ship-to-ship is one thing, but you also have the ability to bombard the hometowns of defenseless people when you find settlements on planets, which allowed me to choose how insanely assholish I wanted to be by dropping a couple bombs, or basically loading up the ordnance needed to bomb a black hole into existence and dropping it on the retirement home of a pirate base. And you, of course, also have ground units like tanks and battle bots that can fight it out as well. Pretty good stuff. Now, when we look at a game like this in this genre, all the elements have to come together. That's one of the very reasons that this genre got its numbered-based nomenclature in the first place. Currently, it feels like this game is moving in that direction, but it's held back by a dirty UI, cumbersome controls, and lack of information that is not really looking like a synergistic problem or any kind of systematic thing underneath the gameplay itself. It just seems like a pretty dirty UI and something that needs some streamlining. Now, once I worked through those issues myself, I found a really enjoyable game. It's just that there were some bumps here and there, and the pacing was a little off. Fun factor. It was fun. It does have those weird bumps in its playability, starting out and getting ruined, not because of the enemy just being better, but because the UI didn't really supply good enough info, and I needed that, or in a way that was easily digestible. And that sort of gave way to figuring it out by myself later on. Some logical issues remained, and some of those mechanics there I would have liked to have been fixed, but overall, it was pretty fun. So as you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for sale, rent, or never touch it again rating scale. Because this is early access, is pretty much check it out, or don't check it out, and go from there. Right now, I have to say that of all the early access games I touch and look at, this is one of the roughest. But at the same time, it also allowed for more enjoyment as I jumped into it. It's one of those games that I think maybe could have probably been held back for a couple weeks to a month prior to going to early access and would have offered a better overall worldview and certainly better stylings, better information in the UI. But right now, there's something there that I really like. It's just a little bit difficult to get to. So as always, if you guys like the video, give it a thumbs up, maybe check out the Patreon. If you dislike the video, give it a thumbs down. And as always, if you want good reviews that aren't 2 minutes long or filled with bullshit, stick with ACG. Peace out and enjoy the rest of your week.